Hello, good evening, it's Matt Rogers. The time is now 5:40 PM on Thursday the 15th, the 6th, 2017. And in today's topic we're going to talk about Nibiru, the ancient Planet X. Now this is a very interesting topic because we all want to seek the truth, don't we? And the truth is out there, isn't it? There are also many revelations to references about Armageddon and Wormwood, or some kind of apocalyptic event that we always hear about in ancient times, also being tied to things like the Great Flood. Now a lot of this information was talked about in the Old Testament and even Hebrew. Even the Old English Testament, the King James Testament, as collocated versions of a much longer version of creation, found in the original stone versions of the Sumerian culture. And this is really the term of Nibiru, the planet of crossing, starts to come into play. And also anybody that's learned about these topics of Planet X and Nibiru, looking online, can see that there's been a vast amount of interest in search for this ancient Planet X. We'll also talk about the modern coming of the Planet X in another video. And this evening we want to just specifically point at the ancient version of the Planet X history with the Sumerians. Also the knowledge of when this object, Nibiru, was up there in the skies and people noticed it back in the past, and what huge problems it had in its ancient past of these people. And also when we study this original biblical story, and when they talk about the Great Flood, it also, the story goes through of many different cultures. Now my study is specifically on the Sumerian culture, that is specifically like modern day Iraq. We've heard it under the terms of like Babylon, but originally under 3800 BC we have Sumer, and amongst the thousands of stone tablets with the Sumerian culture, they have references of these beings, the Anunnaki, coming from a very specific point from our solar system, a planet called Nibiru. So let's kind of explore some of this factual data that talks about this planet Nibiru and its reaction to our ancient planet Earth. Now this is one of the most significant known Sumerian tablets. This ancient tablet is called the Enuma Elish. It consists over several tablets. It tells of a much more elongated tale about life and creation in general, and it speaks of not only our solar system in general, but also planets coming into existence, but more specifically us, and also why there was a great flood, but not because just a great flood, but what caused this great flood. But it was the passing of this planet Nibiru, the actual home world of the gods, and actually comes past close to the inner part of our solar system. And when this took place thousands of years ago, or maybe even millions of years ago, but we know that it's had catastrophic effects here on Earth. So the Enuma Elish tablet has very interesting text, because it simply tells us all the relevant information that we need in this Sumerian version that we find in the Hebrew and the New Testament, English in the biblical tales. For instance, 7 days of creation in Genesis, and also there was 7 tablets in creation in part of this much longer epic of this tablet, the Enuma Elish. See, we must understand about these biblical references of the Great Flood, and speaking of times, of giants upon the earth. Most of this information, of these consolidated stories, coming from the original hieroglyphs, these are just derivative stories from the original texts that we find in the Sumerian versions. So we all want to ask questions: what caused the Great Flood, with Nibiru passing Earth in the past? And we've seen that it's had gravitational effects of here on Earth. It has caused a Great Flood in the past. Now if we look at some of this evidence, not only of this knowledge of the flood, but the history goes way back into the Sumerian times. There is an actual tablet on display in the British Museum as being one of the Sumerian flood tablets. And just like Noah in the English Bible, we also have a version in Sumerian, where a Sumerian man, Upapistine, was a chosen man by the Anunnaki, a Sumerian god, to build a large craft for his family and plants and animals from the region, and load it onto this ship from the large flood that's going to be taking place. And in this version of the Illuminanish, in a much longer epic that also explains about when Nibiru passes by Earth in the past, it caused one of the greatest size ice sheets to crack off. It's like having a large piece of ice in your hand and throwing it into a glass of water, where all the water levels around the world just raised instantly. So we have a much longer story in the Sumerian book tablets than we do with our Bible now these days. The true explanation why we had a great flood, and it has to do with this ancient planet X, Nibiru, of passing by us with its huge gravitational effects, which caused massive ice sheets to crack off, and again that instantly raised our water levels around the world. We have to remember though that the Great Flood is still looked upon as great mythology. We're seeking out the evidence to instantiate this, for even further references, for checking through these Sumerian tablets that this actually did take place. I also have here on the screen this ancient evidence of a mapping system where there was knowledge of all of the continents, extending well into our history, well beyond our ability to aerial document, of pieces of topography. Now this ancient map, the Paris map, you can see the original document now on the screen, is very interesting because it has a very detailed image of the North and South Pole, all the land masses and all the continents. It even has the details of the types of animals that live within those regions, and no one has an understanding to actually accurately map the topography that goes way back into our history. And there were several maps that were like this. There was also the Phineas map. See, the Phineas map is substantial interest because it shows the actual topography of the landmass underneath the ice. Now we've really got to get our heads around this one, because we've got to now realise that there is a mile thick of ice, and suddenly now we have maps that are now depicting of what is underneath the ice. So there's no way they could have known that they've had an aerial advantage to see this, let alone the ability to accurately pick the landmass underneath the ice. Now when we hear this idea of an ancient planet X, we have to understand, or of Nibiru, that the Sumerian version of our solar system, not much but a slightly different view of how we classify the planets now, today. We think that Earth is the third planet from the Sun. where if you look at this model of the planets coming from the outer solar side of the system, whereas really Earth is then the seventh planet. Sacred number 7 and 7 days in a week. It's just a very interesting number. This image isn't to scale, it's just an artist imagery. Was the Sumerian version of the solar system was 12 planets. If you counted the 9 planets that we are known of, the Sun, the Moon, then this additional planet, Nibiru, as the 12th member of our solar system. So this is a very interesting piece of information, that their gods, the Anunnaki, come from this 12th planet. This number 12 permeates all through the ancient cultures, and even up to date of knowledge that we use. If you think about it, like the 12 disciples of Jesus, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 Greek Olympians, 12 hours in a day and 12 inches in a foot, 12 months in a year, the 12 desire or breakdowns in the heavens. It's just again that number 12 goes right through our knowledge, through our history. And we still use this as today, and it's traced right back to this ancient facts of Planet X, Nibiru, the 12th planet in our inner solar system, of the home of the gods. We should ask ourselves of why we should give credence to the Sumerians of this Planet X. Nibiru is that most of today's astronomical data that they've left us can confirm. We see that they are truly on the level. We can also see that they've recorded accurate information over hundreds of years, and also thousands of years of astronomical events. And these Sumerian tablets are of sacred information, only true known knowledge held by the higher priest. So it's not like all of the Sumerian culture knew of this astronomical data. This is sacred information that was again held by the high priest, that was passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. See, you could ask a certain astronomer, a Sumerian astronomer, and they would be able to tell you 50 years in advance of a solar eclipse, or even a lunar eclipses. So they made very accurate observations of the night skies, just like many other cultures did, passing this down as sacred information. And many of the biblical references that they talked about that actually explain the stars, not as living objects that modern times archaeologists would interpret, that of physical places that had a life essence, things like the Earth and Nibiru, or the ways they would travel to get to Earth to Nibiru, is actual well documented as actual information. So we all have to understand that a culture from 6,000 years ago is giving us evidence of astronomical data that we can now confirm as now being accurate. But the kicker of this information is talk about another planet that we need and we still have to confirm. A planet 4 to 8 times the size of Earth. And if we do discover this planet, it will definitely be Nibiru, the ancient Planet X, where we possibly have ancestors living on that celestial body. We also see in the past that there was some intruder planet that caused a great havoc to our solar system. And it also turns out that the Sumerians also told it in a detailed, much more detailed way than our science can yet convey. See, the Sumerian version speaks of an intruder planet that's called Planet X or Nibiru, was gravitationally affected by the outer planets of our solar system. And this was also before the planets were solid masses and thinnest coalescing. The Nibiru was pulled into the inner part of our solar system, then starts having an orbit around our main sun. Now, through the Sumerian tales, they explain that one of these excessive orbits came so close to our primitive Earth that Nibiru's moon whacked onto our heavenly body, the Earth. And they also explained that the Nibiru's moon, one of the moons was called North Wind, that hit into Earth, smashed into it. And it also literally cracked Earth into two, causing Earth to be moved with our moon, moved into a new orbit, leaving remnants of the asteroid belt, which we still see to this day. And also the Bible references the asteroid belt as the hammered out bracelet. Please remember that these are consolidated tales of the original Sumerian version. So as this interaction of this Nibiru moon northward hits our Earth, causing the large asteroid belt, and after all that happened, the Nibiru is being caused to have this long 3,600 year orbit, and it's happening to this day now, and we're starting to see these reflections. We still don't understand why it has got this very long orbit, or what even causes it to stay in this orbit, other than to speculate that there must or has to be a second sun with the Nibiru, Nemesis, the sun's companion star. Nibiru is orbiting round the second sun, a brown dwarf, something that we'd known about for a very long time, probably longer than we think. Anyway, so I'm going to give out some more information on the Sumerians in the next coming days, so please again take care, because the truth is out there, and again we've all been lied to by the government and the